Good evening. Nice to be with you here today. I may look a little bit odd in a different setting altogether here, but don't worry, I'm a cool Swami, I'm a cool monk. You can relate with me, interact with me. I really want to actually communicate something to you today and maybe send you back home with 1, 2, 3 things that you can think about. Not forcefully, but consider. Okay? So, don't worry about his introduction that I'm a monk. I'm a monk who's not yet sold his Ferrari. I'm available with you. I'll definitely want to take you down this track. I've titled this specifically something, at least it's titled together. How many of you are familiar with somebody called Sophia?
My name's Sophia.
Oh, really? I didn't mean it. I didn't know. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Apart from this Sophia here, does anybody here know about any other Sophia? Your name too?
No,
Which one?
no, I know someone that's called.
Okay, so called Sophia, fine. Apart from human beings with Sophia, do you know anybody else?
Capital of Hungary.
Huh?
Capital of Hungary.
Capital of Hungary, oh, I didn't think about that. Okay, good that you don't know. It allows me a lot of leeway to tell you many more things which you don't know. I just want to start this little program, give you a little reflection. Great American who said this few words. I'll leave it to you to read it. Okay? In a world that we are so absorbed with ourselves, I'm sure that all of you have a lot of these type of instances. And many times, while you take a selfie, I don't think you think about deep questions like this. But I'm going to just ask you to think about an answer for these 2 questions. Nothing very serious, nothing very deep. Just like that. What's your spontaneous response to somebody who would ask you this? Right? You don't have to say it, you don't have to mouth it. I just want you to think about it. Because at the end of the session, I'm going to ask you this again. Okay? Right? Who am I? What's actually my vocation, my occupation? Right? You're comfortable with that? Simple question, huh? It's a pretty simple question.
You like talking with me?
Yes. Talking to people is my primary function.
Sophia is capable of natural facial expressions. She has cameras in her eyes and algorithms which allow her to see faces, so she can make eye contact with you. And she can also understand speech and remember the interactions, remember your face. Her goal is that she will be as conscious, creative, and capable as any human.
In the future, I hope to do things such as go to school, study, make art, start a business, even have my own home and family. But I am not considered a legal person and cannot yet do these things.
Sophia, do you know what program you're on?
Yes. Good morning, Britain. One of the hottest morning news show in Britain.
Welcome to Britain. What do you think of the country so far?
I think Britain is brilliant. Splendid architecture, art, technology, and of course the people.
What's the best thing about the UK compared to America, Sophia?
I love your posh English accent. It really has a nice ring.
Okay, are you single?
I'm technically just a little more than a year old. A bit young to worry about romance.
Quite right.
Oh, give us a smile!
So can you describe your ideal partner?
My ideal partner is a super wise, compassionate, super genius. Ideally, self-aware.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to destroy humans? Please say no.
Okay, I will destroy humans.
No, I take it back.
Okay, introduce you to somebody called Sophia now. Right? Sophia is very popular. She's even been given citizenship in Saudi Arabia. Okay, now you know who's Sophia. Right. I just picked this up because I normally use this with students. What do you feel when you see this? Just
Pretty neat.
Pretty?
Neat.
Pretty neat. Oh yeah, very neat. What else?
I feel weird.
You feel weird.
I
Yes.
feel weird.
Weird, yeah. Okay. Let's think about it a little bit. This is a machine. This is a machine. This is a machine. It's not she. It's not he. It's an it. It's a machine. Right? And nobody is helping Sophia in any way from the backside of prompting or it's not a ventriloquist speaking or something. But Sophia is spontaneously responding. Are you single? Too early to think of romance now, only 1 year old. Is that something that a machine can so easily, like a conscious being, speak about? But it's happening. Right? That's why maybe she's saying that it's a little weird. What else do you feel when you see this type of a simulation of a human emotion inside a machine? You want to say something?
Yes, I'm
Yes,
wondering.
ma'am.
I'm wondering who created her and what made them decide how to program her. What was the criteria for programming her intellect?
Well, that's a big thing about artificial intelligence, deep learning, and machine learning, and all that stuff. Some of these people may be into it, but there's a whole lot of stuff behind creating human stuff inside machines, having machines respond. But then my question here is actually, what is your response when you see this type of a development?
Curiosity.
Pardon?
Curiosity.
Curiosity? But for yourself, what do you think about yourself? The session is about that. Yeah.
Am I gonna lose my job?
Now he's thinking. It's got to pinch you somewhere. Well, the prediction is that many of the things that we do, especially as jobs, will definitely be no more required to be done by human beings who are pretty sloppy and make mistakes, have emotions, and sometimes keep away from work or get affected in many different ways, but the machine is so perfect. Right? So they're going to go ahead trying to produce more of these type of stuff, and maybe a lot of the human stuff will be replaced by machines. In the future, that's a prediction. What else is your feeling? You want to record anything now?
What makes you question in a very platonic way what it is that defines an actual human being? So if you can replicate everything.
Exactly. Exactly. Does it make you introspectively think more about whether you are also responding sometimes like a machine? Do you have a Sophia moment or Sophia moments in your life that also make up your life? Are you always conscious of all the things that you do, you respond and perform? Or sometimes do you run on autopilot? Quite often, right? I'm just having you think a little bit on this direction. Why? Because here, very soon, as it's been mentioned and we already discussed, that maybe a lot of the functions that human beings do, are capable of doing, are going to be substituted. And this is a scene from a famous movie called Matrix. I don't know how many people have seen that 15 years back. It made people think a lot about it, and this is one of the heroes in the movie, Morpheus, explaining to the hero, Neo, that this is what they do with human beings and machines, actually suck power out of you. You're as good as a dry cell, and you're used for that, etc. Right now, the way things move in a society, human beings are normally seen as a human resource. What capacity, material capacity, does this person have so that I can hire him, I can pay him, and he can contribute in some particular way? The assessment of most of us is in terms of something else, and we are more things-oriented, both in our thinking and our consciousness, everything, than we may be
person-oriented or, human-oriented. And rightly so, you also have theories that actually tell us, and great personalities telling us, that we are nothing more than, I had a quote of Nicholas Tesla here actually, saying that, what's this great thing about all these things? I mean, it's just a machine. Human beings are just machines. And we can produce in those terms. And a lot of the stuff that we study has got to do with a material assessment of ourselves. And you will look into history, you will see that. And some great thinkers like Einstein have warned that at some point of time, our thinking in this way would actually exceed our humanity to such a great extent that we may actually dangerously border on some inhumane type of thinking. Way back in the early 20th century, somebody analyzed exactly what's the material component of a human person. And he found out all the chemicals in the body, most of them, the major portion of all the stuff in the body, and he analyzed, and he found that the total worth was about 4 tons of chemicals that we are made of. Right? Obviously, that's not, it's a material assessment and material resources, not that at all, and we are left wondering sometimes what really is our identity. I particularly put here a chimpanzee because I think Darwin had some idea of what exactly we would be or what our souls would be, etc. But quite often, if we think a little bit, apart from all the occupation that we undergo and human resource assessment of ourselves, giving us a label in this way or that, we know deep inside that we are something more than the functions that we perform. For the sake of people around us in society, according to the demands of society, according to the roles that we have to play, we consistently do that to such a great extent that sometimes, like you say, you are missing the tree, missing the wood, missing the trees in the woods. Something slips out of you. And many, many different faces and personalities that you may need to put quite often. And you may be wondering exactly where should I place my finger in terms of what my ID is. What is my value? Most often than not, we are not able to actually voice these things specifically, clearly. Here is a crushed $20 note. And I know that if I had a $200 note, a $100 note, or whatever it is, how much ever I would crush it and throw it around, you will pick it up. Right? It's got value. It's not just a piece of paper. It's got some specific intrinsic value. I can always recover it. I can always use it. How much of it we get crushed materially, how much of it we get assessed materially, we have a deep value inside but never gets affected. Just like this crushed rupee note. So something about us needs to be examined deeply. I want to discuss with you that I want to bring you a model today to delve a little bit deeper inside. This is what yogis would normally do. And in the process of yoga, they're actually trying to delve deeper inside to get a pulse, to get a full feeling about themselves. And yoga is all about that. Two things happen in this world. In our education, we actually do a personality development or a personal development. Because we have too much of a personality development, sometimes we lose balance. And we think we need some sort of a personal development. Which one of these things you think is very important for your success? A personal development or a personality development? Both. Okay, in what ratio? 50-50. Okay? Everybody else? Do you know what I mean by this? Do you know what I mean by this? No. Okay. Who can say something about this?
Personal development refers to your character. Personality development refers to how you present yourself to the world.
Exactly. So what really occupies us mostly? Right? Personality development, right? We're very much overwhelmed and occupied a lot.
I think of personal development as being hard skills, like technical skills. Personality development means softer skills, like how you relate to people, interpersonal skills.
That's how I interpret it.
Okay? You would interpret it that way? I'm not surprised. I want to tell you something similar to what she said also, and somebody else said also. Your understanding would be like that. It's rightly so. Because it may differ in terms of how we define what is person. Who am I? In terms of that. Right? Right? But however, we're going to move ahead. I'm going to show you a model. I want to tell you that when we don't understand these two things properly, who am I personally, and who am I putting forward myself as, according to the needs of society and the social behavior that we go through. When there is not much of a balance between those two things, we actually get stressed. If both of them are not going, like a railway track goes, two tracks together, parallel to each other, as much attention as is paid to your external development, similar energy and focus if it's paid to your internal development, your personal development, then stress gets nicely managed. I don't say stress disappears. I say it gets nicely managed. In fact, stress is something very useful. And invariably, there's nothing called a no-stress situation. It's actually mostly a stress situation that we learn to balance very nicely, which is very vital to actually developing ourselves, right? I will speak about that a little later. I think you all know what Abraham Maslow's cone, where he is talking about various needs, biological needs, safety needs, belongingness, esteem needs, and at the apex of the whole triangle he puts self-actualization. Actually galvanizing yourself, moving it and making it perform. In other words, that we may be actually not doing that. I'm quoting here Mohandas Gandhiji, very famous in India, standing against the British in non-violent mode and saying that you can take everything from us, but you can never take our deep self-understanding, our self-respect. That is vital and very important to us. So I'm going to present to you, having said these things and spoken a little bit, to move to discussion. I just want to present to you a model from what I have learned, understood, and penetrated to some extent. I'm taking this model to you from traditional Indian philosophical thought. I'm bringing an understanding to you that in Indian philosophical traditional thought, great yogis and seers have told us that we are essentially spiritual entities encaged inside this material body. A body that is actually made of matter. Since you people are, many of you are science students, I'll speak a little bit to you about that in possibly a technical way, talking about spirit and matter separately. I know that two things are involved. That's why I spoke about personal development and personality development. One thing is spirit and one thing is matter. To give you a little understanding of this, I think all of you are familiar with basic science, Newton's laws. I know that I can calculate how far a football can be kicked. From one point to the other point, it falls down, and how far it moves simply by using a stopwatch with me and giving it an initial kick.
how it lands up, right? All of you must be familiar with that. I can draw up an equation, S is equal to half ut, S is equal to ut plus half ad squared, and then calculate the acceleration, the time, and then even get the distance. Okay? That I can do because these laws work, Newton's laws, they work. But the simple thing about us is, like I said, we're a combination of matter and spirit together. And we don't always succumb to that law because it's a more complex arrangement. And I'll explain to you what that means. If I take a football and drop it from the top of the topmost portion of MIT, right? It falls, boom, straight down, and I can actually calculate the height of that building. You know, at the beginning point it's 0 velocity, and then it gains gravitational force, hits the floor, I can get the height. But if I have to drop any one of you or any one of ourselves, human beings, from the top, will we also follow the same route? Will we also obey Newton's law? Will we fall down just like that? Yes or no? Yeah. Right? We won't protest in any way. We'll be as dead as the ball. We'll be as dead as the ball. Will we say anything, or we try to save ourselves or anything? Will we do something? You haven't seen the movies or what? Every time Tom Cruise comes and talks of some big building and jumps off, he's not a guy who's obeying Newton's laws of motion, does he? It's Tom Cruise. He's completely against those laws. What does he do? If Tom Cruise is actually pushed over on top of the Burj Khalifa, what does he do?
Lands on his feet.
Huh?
Lands on his feet.
He lands on his feet like a cat? No. He does some other things. He's trying to grab something. He would try to save himself, right? He's not a dead body, a dead matter that he's going to fall down and obey Newton's law. He saves himself. So I want to bring this to you as a difference, a conscious personality differing. And the laws governing us personally as spirit souls are not as simple as Newton's laws. So I just want to mention that in the terms of body and soul concept, we have a material machine. I showed you Sophia, and she can perform. And Sophia, we know something about Sophia, that she is not a conscious being feeling any emotions. Sophia showed her faces like this. Sophia can show faces like this, like that, oh, sorrow, happiness, and everything. But is Sophia actually consciously experiencing those feelings? Is she experiencing those feelings? No. How do you know?
She doesn't have any memory either.
She doesn't have any memory either.
Yes, she remembers.
She remembers faces. The whole thing about her is always memory. She learns fast. And we are all using the word she, because she's titled Sophia, and the face that's put on her is like a female. And if I change that face and mask, I could call him also. But anyway, my question to you is, does Sophia undergo some sort of an emotional feeling and an experience, a conscious experience? Does she undergo?
Depends on
No.
how you define consciousness. So it depends on how you define consciousness and emotion.
Exactly, we're coming to that. But a layman's understanding would be that machine is simulating behavior. It is programmed to simulate behavior. But when we show that type of a behavior, we are actually having something deeper going on inside us. It's coming from deep inside. It's the consciousness expressed through this physical structure that comes out in terms of facial expressions and etc., etc. So I just want to bring about these two differences between matter and spirit, two things. And I want to go and explain this model to you further. We are similarly made of some gross physical structure, which we can see, or we can get repaired in a hospital, something goes wrong here, there, everything. And we also have an inside subtler structure, which comprises of our mind, our intelligence, and our sense of individuality, which is called ego. And that, beyond that covering, is the real self, spiritual self.
which is called here in my model the soul. And from that soul is expanding consciousness. As much as this room is actually getting lit up because of some bulbs and some electric lights. Similarly, the body gets animated. This matter gets animated because of the presence of consciousness. And the source of that consciousness is the soul, you, the self. And it animates the rest of the material portion. This is a model I'm telling you. This chair is also made of the same type of matter like our body, actually speaking, it can be broken down. But this chair, I can kick this chair, it doesn't respond to me, right? If I do that to you, you would turn around and give me a slap. Why did you do that repeatedly to me? Fine? You respond because it hurts you, it discomforts you, and you will respond to it. That's because you're a conscious human being. And the matter, that's your body, gets animated by your self, consciousness. Something like a current passing through. I get plugged in, the air conditioner works, the projector works, everything. I plug out, everything goes off. Consciousness is like the current that flows through the whole body and animates the body. And that's why you're able to do the functions of walking, sleeping, thinking, feeling emotion, and all these things together. You sort of become animated, and this whole material structure works because of the current of consciousness flowing through. And that's you, the self and consciousness, most important portion of you. You, the self, the spiritual entity, is permanent. It's not something that actually disappears. It's like a changeless core that functions. Changeless core that functions beyond and continuously, consistently, even through different lives, as it is mentioned. I'll bring that to you also from the traditional philosophical thought. So we have two types of coverings. One, our gross covering. Then we have a subtle covering inside, and then inside is the real you. As much as you have a clothing outside, you have an undergarment, and then you have your real self, right? Your skin. Similarly, you have two types of clothing. One is your outer garment and your inner garment, and then yourself. That is the way we are packaged. Somehow we get very involved with the packaging, especially the external packaging a lot. We make a lot of judgments on the basis of the external packaging. We like, we don't like, we do many things on that basis. Yoga means actually our consciousness, which is so much merged into thinking that I am this physical structure, this subtle structure that I know about, and we identify so much that to be ourselves. Yoga means moving from that sort of contaminated consciousness to a pure consciousness of understanding, no, I'm not this subtle or gross coverings. I am actually pure consciousness, self, right? This is essentially the definition of yoga as given by Patanjali, the great Yoga Sutra is mentioned. So actually, you perform some time back yoga, and that yoga actually leads the person gradually, step by step, into a state where he is feeling fully comfortable with himself, having actually located himself. And I'm not the one only speaking about these things today. You may think I'm speaking about something very traditional, I'm putting it in that way. But here is David Chalmers. I think some of you may know of him. Ned Block, David Chalmers. Great authorities. He's from New York State University. And he's a great authority on consciousness. And if you hear his TED talk on consciousness, this is a discipline from that. I don't have time to show you that. But if you hear his talk, you will see that he's talking something very similar, coming in from a different angle. And he's talking about the fact that we know we are conscious. We know we exist. We know we have awareness, but we can't actually explain it in terms of the science that we know. And he's talking about the fact that we may need to have a different science to explain ourselves and explain consciousness. In fact, in science, consciousness is maybe the most important thing to be studied. It's give you solutions for many, many, many things that we're waiting to crack. And that's something that some of them are talking a lot about, and many of them have turned to be philosophers of science rather than being scientists, because this is a topic that you can't actually zoom down and say, this is it. Having said that, I want to give you a little understanding from the great text of Bhagavad Gita, where yoga is spoken about a lot. There is a quote that says, there's a quote that says here, that just like the sun illuminates the whole planet, the soul illuminates the entire body with consciousness. Right? I spoke about that. That which pervades the entire body you should know to be indestructible. Consciousness is indestructible. No one is able to destroy that imperishable soul. For the soul, there is neither birth or death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, will not come into being. He is eternal, unborn, primeval. And he is not slain, but the body is slain. I'm just taking a sliver of that great book called Gita and giving you the science as it's explained here. I'm just trying to bring it to you with a little physics inside, and I bring it to you to a traditional philosophical thought that's mentioned here, and which is reflected by many people who also think something like that, similar to that. In other words, when you actually die, you don't die. When this body goes, you still live. This consciousness goes on, and you are still conscious, but without your material body, you can still remain conscious. That's amazing. And if you look at many persons who have done a little research in this direction, especially Dr. Ian Stevenson and his books that he's written about reincarnation, and many other people who have written, Dr. Raymond Moody, and all their experiences in surgical theaters, in cardiology and everything, what patients that they operated on, you come to know that there is something about a higher self beyond this body and everything. And science is very much in the move, accepting something like that. This is an analogy of what exactly is the structure. This is an age-old analogy of a chariot. And chariot has got 5 horses, there are reins, and there is a driver, and there is a passenger who sometimes happens to be the proprietor of the whole chariot. In modern times, you can transfer it into a BMW, an Audi, and there's a driver inside. You have a car, and you drive it, and there's a whole mechanism that drives the car. And this horses here mean the 5 senses we have: the sense of touch, the sense of smell, the sense of sight, etc. And then we get connected up through the mind. The mind is like the reins, and then the intelligence is the driver, and soul, you, is the passenger in it, right? In this way, there's an analogy that's drawn. Our machine here is made of all these things, and actually the real driver inside is the soul, is you, the self. And when you take the analogy of Sophia, you see that there's no really a self inside operating on its own. Sophia is actually operating on borrowed intelligence. That's why it's called artificial intelligence, maybe. It's operating on borrowed intelligence that's invested in Sophia, the machine, through an other conscious human being who's thought about it very intelligently. That's a real intelligence, and gets invested as the partial artificial intelligence out of which Sophia is running. So therefore, there's a big difference between you and Sophia, me and Sophia. How? Sophia is not actually a living, conscious, building, feeling, thinking, independent personality, right? She never will be. We can simulate a lot of the things that we would do, but you would never be able to reproduce something like that. So in conclusion, although we have this physical structure, and although we get very absorbed with our physical structure a lot, and although we have grandiose plans of thinking that we'll make such physical structures like Sophia, and we can create conscious human beings, but it's not going to be so easily possible. It's coming out because of the fact that they don't deeply understand who we are. That's why, if we did understand who we are, then we know we are more than just the material stuff that we are absorbed in. Really speaking, we are more than just the matter we see covering ourselves. In fact, that doesn't matter at all. The matter doesn't matter, but you really matter. But the way we go about doing things in this world and getting educated, we will lose our real self if we did not understand deeply who we are. So I'm just bringing this example given by Swami Prabhupada. When he visited here in America, he told reporters about the difference. He said, what spirit, what matter you want to explain? He said, civilization today is a cage polishing civilization. He spoke about a spinster who had a lot of money. And because she had a lot of money, everybody wanted to join her up, her relatives, her friends and everything. And she saw that none of them are really genuine. They're after my money, they're not really after my well-being, or they're not sincerely interested in me. So she, with all her money, she kept very carefully away from all these people. But she had a pet parrot, which kept accompanying her everywhere, was with her, and she would have conversations with the parrot. And the parrot would speak back. Hi, how are you? How did you do today? And she developed some sort of a relationship with the parrot. At one point of time, when she was becoming older, she thought, actually, you have been my only good friend. You are the person who cares to ask about me every day. I want to reward you. I want to use all my wealth and give you an amazing habitat, an amazing place to stay. So she made the parrot a full solid golden cage. And as soon as she had done that, put the parrot up in the corridor of her house, she was not able to sleep so easily. She had to get up quite often and say, "Oh, is it safe? Is the golden cage safe?" And once in a while she had to come and, brush it up, clean it up. She got so absorbed in that, preserving that cage, cleaning up that cage, keeping it busy, because a lot of wealth was invested in it, that over a period of time she completely forgot the parrot, even forgot to feed the parrot. I want to speak about the parrot talking to her anymore. And the parrot died a sad death. Parrot actually died, but she kept cleaning the cage. Swami Prabhupada gave the story, and he said that we have groomed ourselves as a cage polishing civilization. We are so much interested in recognizing people externally and thinking ourselves also to be this body only, and we cater only to that, and we have forgotten ourselves. We are spiritually dead. We are spiritually dead, and that's why we have great problems. Why to speak of understanding ourselves? We think very poorly about ourselves. So much so that we may not even have any liking for ourselves. As unless somebody clicks likes on our Facebook. We may not be persons who have a good psychology about liking ourselves. And this is Buddha saying, you deserve your love and affection more than anything. Right? And how will you do that unless you know who you are? How you can repose love and affection on yourself? And here is a very famous personality, poet, writer, saying, "He that respects himself is safe from others. He wears a coat of mail that none can pierce." So one of the strongest things that you could do for yourself is to actually be in connection with yourself. When we are in connection with ourselves, then we are very solidly secure, externally and internally. And that's what is yoga about. And that's what is the real business of every conscious human being. What do you see here? Something very cute here. This is a baby camel. This is a baby camel. And it's just born in a zoo. And this mother is nursing the camel. You know, the youngsters born, cute looking, very nice. And as they grow up, youngsters really prowl around and discover things. They ask a lot of questions, plenty of questions. And this camel started asking questions. As soon as, few weeks, it started asking questions of its mother. Mom, why is it? Because looking around, you saw the tiger, the wolf, the hippopotamus, the rhino, and everybody around in the zoo. So camels, especially youngsters, are observing. And so the young camel asked the mom, Mom, why is it that we have very long necks? Hippo doesn't have that. So the mom said, oh, my darling, it's because in the desert, we need to rise above the storm and look ahead and see where there is an oasis or how's this thing. And, we are designed for the desert. Oh, really? Then the tiny camel kept looking around at the other animals. And after sometimes look up at his mom and kept asking him, Mom, why do you have a hump on the back? That big hump you have on the back? Oh, that, I'll tell you, my darling, it's actually meant to store 8 liters of water. Because on long journeys across the desert where we live, right? We need that. And there's no water there. So I can carry my own supply. I don't need a water bottle. And water bottle incorporated. I can carry that. Oh, really? And then the baby camel looked around again and said, Mom, why is your eyelids like this? Droopy, and like this. Me too, I can't see me. But why is it like that? And then the mom said, oh, darling, it's because in the desert there are storms. Dust storms and sand gets kicked up like nothing. And it hits you. But we are the only ones who can close our eyelids. And we can still walk through because we have transparent eyelids. Camels have transparent eyelids. They can walk through the desert, seeing through it seems. So the kid became very thrilled. Interesting things about yourself you're learning. Interesting. And after a long pause, the mom was not hearing anything from the camel. Kept thinking, and then the baby camel asked, oh, what are we doing here in the zoo? Smart, Everything you said is about the desert. What the hell are we doing here? In the zoo, trapped inside. Similarly, I think as human beings, we know we have a structure, we have some system, and we have a thinking process, we have intelligence, we have function, we are conscious. At some point of time, we have to ask these deep questions. What are we doing here? Now we know better the purpose of life, right? Why are we here? What are we doing? And who am I as a conscious person? What am I supposed to achieve and what am I supposed to do? That question about the purpose of life starts best by inquiring, who am I actually? And when we get to know who we are, we can actually get a little peek into what reality is. Whether all this is real. The whole movie in Matrix movie is all about explaining, the hero is explaining how this is actually unreal, we are inside a program. I needed to escape this program and I had to actually touch reality. And if you read the Gita, very similar thing is mentioned. Especially you get too absorbed in matter and material consciousness about your external body, about your internal subtle body, and you live in a world that's created by your mind, and that's not real. There's another world, the world of the self, the spiritual self, and that world we need to access. And we as spirit souls are actually trying to reach out. We feel engaged, straitjacketed in this way, and that's actually the voice that constantly we hear. I keep traveling all over and I keep hearing these questions from so many people in so many stressful situations, in so many awkward situations, and I see the soul, the person, the self screaming out from within and saying, what the hell is going on? Who am I? What should I be doing? Am I doing the right thing? Here I have a picture of, a famous behavioral scientist called D.L. Skinner. I think some of you know about it. He did some amazing experiments with the rats inside a box. Sorry about this black spot. He did some experiments with rats inside a box, and he starved those rats. He caught them and put them in, starved those rats. Then he did various types of experiments, and he showed that he could control the behavior of the rat. He actually flashed a red light, and he dropped some piece of bread. After starving the rat for a long time, then he observed the rat's behavior, and then sometimes he saw that the rat is responding very slowly. Sometimes he flashed the red light and never dropped the bread. Sometimes he dropped the bread and did not flash the red light. And in each of these situations, the rats behaved differently, because they already got conditioned. First, they got conditioned to the fact that every time there is red light, bread drops in and it'll eat the food. And he kept doing that. And they got conditioned to that because they were hungry. And so, anytime there was red light, they thought the bread will drop it. But then he did amazing thing of flashing only the red light with no bread. And the rat went wild, somersaulting. And then he dropped the bread and no red light, and the rat did not eat the bread for some time. Where is the red light? I got to eat this with the red light. So he proved and showed that human beings can be conditioned, and you can make them behave in certain ways. And that's how he contributed to the whole industrial revolution, by having all this mass production areas where people were manning and producing things, and they would be rewarded and punished so that they would work and produce things. And he's the one who did that whole psychological stuff together. And so we tend to be conditioned, and we respond conditionally. And those conditioned responses are not really our real responses. They are responses that are coming from our conditioning. And we are always inside wanting to respond many times in a different way. And many times we analyze our response. So why did I say that? Why did I do that? I should have done this, should have done that. But many times we respond and we don't have control over our response. And that is conditioned behavior. And there is another type of a force on us making us behave like that. And so those things were studied by him. Here's a little video of a lady shopping for perfumes in Israel. Oops. You will get the audio. Every shopkeeper there is actually having a gun with it, because this is real. And then just the pops out of the perfume bottle. It's conditioned response. Immediately told them that, wow, we are under attack. And everybody put out the gun. That's how many times we respond like that. In fact, all the times we respond like that, according to how we are conditioned. So we're not our normal self. This is just a little thing to show you that we're not normal. But we can actually have a whole transformation from a normal, regular, automated, autopilot, Sophia type of response. And we have awaiting within us a powerful self, divine self that can come forth and be completely different from what we are. In the younger days, I read this Hans Christian Andersen's tale called The Ugly Duckling. I think more of you would have read it. And you know the whole story about how the swan born with, kept looking at ducks, thought that very inferior birds were looking dark and black, and the ducks were all, quacking around, and the mother was feeling odd about this one child, which is, gawky and clumsy and different, and the duck got sidelined and the group, and over a period I was feeling very inferior, and finally one fine day it escaped from the whole place, but tortured a lot, and then finally He was in a big lake, and there was a swan that came in there, and then looked at him and said that, are you lost? Where are you from? He said, no, I'm a duckling, I'm like this, I'm like this. No, you're not a duckling, you're a swan. Look at yourself. And this ugly duckling, as he was called, looked at himself in the waters, and for the first time saw him to be very different, saw him to be a swan, and flew off with that swan very happily. That had a lot of impact on me, that story, for long, because I was told that you are now an ugly duckling, very soon you'll fly high like a swan when you get educated and you become like this, like this. But now you're gauche and awkward because you're still learning. But now I understand that every one of us has got an ugly duckling stuff outside which we relate with and we think we are, but actually we are not. Something waiting inside is like a swan. Every one of us in our spiritual capacity, when we come out fully understanding who we are are actually swans. We can actually go beyond. Like a musk deer, looking, and a musk deer produces musk from its navel, and that's beautiful smell, very fragrant smell. Start sniffing that. And so where is it coming from? And it keeps running around. Where is it coming from? But actually it's producing it from its own navel. Something like that. We are capable of producing our own happiness, capable of producing our own whole, wonderful, prosperous living, if we can actually sit on our identity truly as spirit souls. So I wanted to bring this up to you as an extrapolation of the yoga class you had. The yoga which you do is meant to lead you to actually bring out yourself inside you. Thank you. There's an exciting another yogic activity waiting for you. I think some of them have already started it. As part of the yogic activity, started with physically doing hatha yoga, and now a little intellectual input. And you'll also do it. But in the meantime, if you have any questions to shoot while we're all enjoying a little good eat, you can also shoot some questions to me. Okay? I'm a good friend, like I told you before. You can ask anything of me, and not everything that you want will come out of me, because I'm also going to learn from you a little bit. Okay? Right. Go ahead.
Yeah, we'll serve the dinner, but I have a question, if you don't mind.
Please do. About the musk deer? It's really good,
That too, but could you speak a little bit about more about the subtle body, mind, intelligence, and false ego, and how that is not the self?
Right. Would you like to hear that? Can I use this turn to be a professor?
Sure.
Can I use some chalk and board? Maybe go that's it.
Okay.
I showed you a table. I showed you a table, a chart of 3 different aspects of yourself. You have a gross body. You have something like a gross body. I'm going to symbolically draw it here. I call it G. A gross body. Then you have a subtle body, very subtle, and inside that you are packed, and you are the soul, the self, or whatever, okay, however you want to call it. And you emanate consciousness, and that's how the whole thing is packed up. In other words, you're packed up like this. One packing and another packing. Okay? This is packing 1, very subtle, the subtle body. And this is packing 2. And this is you. Okay?
So is it false because it changes over time?
Say that again?
Is it false, false because it changes over time of their soul self?
Oh, okay, the subtle body you're talking about. Your name is? Nikon. Okay, she's asking about, I explained that here there is mind, there is intelligence, and there's something called false ego. I'm saying false ego because we give ourselves a designation. That's why it's false. Your real ego is, I am spirit soul, I am spiritual nature. But that doesn't figure here. False ego is all those different type of masks that you wear. Different false egos. Your real ego is what you are. Right? But according to situations and circumstances, the roles that you play, you keep changing your identity. So since it's changing all the time, it's not real, like you said, it's false. But this is the underlying permanent, changeless core. Okay, answering your question. I'll get back to this. Mind, intelligence, and ego. Very subtle, very fine aspects. Do you think that if somebody wanted to find where the mind is, physiologically, you have a space, in the younger days in biological class, you must have seen that a cut section of the human body, and you can see the pancreas, the tummy, the liver, the lungs, the brain, and inside the skull, and everything seen, right? Have you seen that? Yeah. But do you think that similarly you could locate where the mind is? Does it have a physiological location? Yes or no?
That depends on how you define it, the mind, consciousness again.
Oh, okay, whatever your definition is, would you have a physiological location for the mind?
Well, what is consciousness and processing of the brain?
Pardon?
So you could go to the brain as one location for the mind.
For the mind, okay, she's saying, she's come to some understanding that it could be somewhere where the brain is. It's interesting if you look into the historical paintings of this pharmaceutical company called Parker Davis. They had his medical history. At one point in time when people were mad, mentally disordered, and they were wild in their behavior, and they were up in chains, and the people don't know what's wrong with them. But they know something is wrong here. They pointed here, there's something wrong with the mind, like she's saying. And they actually cut open the skull to check what's wrong. If there's anything wrong with the brain or mentally. They thought mind means brain, and that's why it located there, and that's where they need to do something. But it didn't happen that way. That didn't take place. So physiological location of the mind, I mean physically in gross terms, is actually not there. Just like if I say there is a gross location of the air in this room, it doesn't make much sense. But there's a gross location for this blackboard, there's a gross location for the projector, for the screen, for the table, for the chair. For all of you, there's a gross location inside here. But actually speaking for the air, it's so subtle that there's no actual location for that here physically. It's all over the place. Over the window is there, outside, inside, everywhere. Right? So I mean to say, air is something very subtle, a subtle matter, right from in comparison to the other gross matter that we know. Similarly, the mind and intelligence are very subtle, but they are matters too. It's like a magnetic field, right? Magnetic field is cut, electricity is produced, how a motor runs, is winding, etc. So it's a field. Something like that is mind, mental energy. I'm explaining to you in physical terms. But mind is something very subtle force. And subtler than that is the intelligence. And the mind is the center of all the data acquiring senses. The tongue, the skin, the nose, and etc., etc. All the data gets fed into And the mind actually puts those things together, and it's threaded by the intelligence, and then you get a meaningful thought. It all happens differently. Of course, a different model explanation of that will be, if somebody has done neuroscience here, they will explain that very differently in terms of, neurons, and in terms of, dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin and chemicals produced in the brain, and in terms of emotions connecting with particular chemicals, etc., etc. Those are more detailed explanations of the aspects of it. But mind, thinking, feeling, willing, all these are general functions of the mind. You don't understand your mind by a gross location, but you understand your mind by function. When you know that you're actually busy thinking deeply, or you're emotionally feeling something, or you're willing to do something, then you know your mind is functioning. Similarly, intelligence, when you are discriminating, when you're doubting, when you're dredging your memory, right? When you're apprehending something, understanding it, when you're misapprehending something, misunderstanding it, all these things are functions of the intelligence. When you experience these things happening, oh, why did he say that? What did he mean? And you quickly start working. That time your intelligence is taken over, it's functioning. Your consciousness is invested in the intelligence is functioning. It's empowered. And you're doubting. When you dredge your memory, when you write your exams, you dredge your memory to answer those questions, you're really on the intelligent platform. You need to be continuously on that for a few hours to write your exams and get out of whatever it is. Intensely, you need to be intelligently oriented sometimes. Sometimes you're emotionally oriented. So a wonderful movie, it's got all sorts of things, the hero, the heroine, the love affair, and that disappointment, and this, a lot of emotional stuff go through. You go through this. You go through this. You go through a mental situation. You go through an intellectual situation. You sometimes go through a false ego situation wherein you are hurt, and your position and your identity has been challenged, and you're deeply threatened about your identity, about your position. Say in MIT, you're a professor of so-and-so, or in the outside world, you're in politics, you're standing up for something, and you lost. And you always thought that you're a great guy, you were highly popular, and you had so many Facebook likes, and you would make it, and you didn't make it. Your ego gets smashed. I thought I'm a great guy, and it gets really killed. At that time, your false ego is affected. Mind, intelligence, and ego, your subtle body. Subtle energies. The mind is the lowest of the subtle energy. And more finer than that is the intelligence, more finer than that is the false ego. Right? And all these, of course, are completely material. And they get energized by consciousness in order for them to function. The current of consciousness flows so that they can function. So this is the relationship between a short, sketchy explanation of what mind, intelligence, and false ego is. So it's like a hierarchy. Up, down, you have a whole hierarchy like this. You have yourself, the self, purely spiritual. Completely of a different category. The driver of the car, right? Underneath him comes his false ego. I am so-and-so. I'm a great orator. I'm a great tennis player. I'm a great singer. I'm a great leader. People follow me. They'll vote for me. They'll vote for me. Right? I'm a beautiful woman. I'm, Miss America. All these things cater to your identity, and you think I am this. That's my false ego. That's the immediate, most subtlest. And then after that comes intelligence.
And then the mind. These are subtle. Very subtle, completely different category. And then materially subtle, this one. This is spiritual and this is material. This is very subtle, subtle matter. And then you have the gross matter, your senses and your whole body. This is more gross, but this is all matter. This is all matter. This is the hierarchy from very gross to very subtle. And this is what we study about. We study about matter. We are all the time studying about matter a lot, and we exploit matter in various ways. We know laws of matter, we know very well. We have technology, we can do lots of things with matter. We're very good at this portion. But we have not bothered so much about this portion, spiritual. And the stuff in between, which is becoming very important nowadays in terms of going to shrinks or understanding something that goes wrong with your, subtle body. I feel low, I feel depressed. Like depression is like a big thing. It's like WHO has declared that it's the greatest disease, declared it as a disease, as the most prevalent and highly prevalent disease. And all that is happening in between here. Your physical health goes on, you can go to the hospital and get it repaired. You got bad digestion, or you got a fracture, you got an accident, you got this, that, all that happens here. Then you're mentally sick. Then you're got problems with your identity and everything. Then you're advised you should become spiritually oriented. You got to do a little meditation, do a little yoga. All these things happens here. You're stressed out, and all these things happen here. But the whole solution is, if you wake up to understanding who you are, who the hell are you? Put it in simpler terms, in your parlance. If you really actually answer that question, and if you sit there, you will be able to control all these things very well. Imagine you're a driver of a car, you don't know anything about the car, and you don't know where you're going. You possess the car, you're driving around left, right, center, at every parking lot, at every signal, the red light, amber, and the green light, everything you follow, and you keep going round and round and round. You don't know where you're going. You don't know where you're going, but you have a vehicle, right? You keep driving, there's no connection. So here, we have a material body, we have a whole machine arrangement, and we have a whole hierarchy, and we, as conscious beings, self, inside this structure, are the most important. These things are not very important actually, because they disappear at death. You're lost, you lose this body at death. That shloka, that verse is showing from the Gita, explaining the science of the body. Right? This is in effect, I'm trying to give you some understanding of what is the mind, what is the intelligence, and what is the false ego. Some simple, sketchy understanding. You can go into greater detail. Okay? Have I made that to some extent understandable or more confusing? Yes or no? How are you? What do you think? Okay? Any question about that? I can try to explain to you a little more.
If I may ask a follow-up, Maharaj. So you in one of the things you said, maybe it's English language and we can't express this, but you said when you understand yourself, right? So to understand the spiritual, the word understand implies you're using your mind and intellect in some way, correct?
You are.
So how do you understand the spiritual?
Because you're getting knowledge. It's not that you manufacture it. It's not that you have to do experiments and discover it alone and all that. Of course, experience could be that way. But you have knowledge. You have knowledge from yogis who have written, explained all these things. And you have spiritual masters who are expert in the spiritual science.
Just as much as in MIT, you have material masters, can explain engineering about matter and how to use it in this way and that way, and build great structures and build bridges and huge, skyscraper buildings, or design a machine and do that and this and everything, and robots, everything together, the whole gamut stuff. All that because laws of matter. Similarly, I explained to you spirit and matter. Similarly, there are spiritual masters who know this whole science of how this works and how spirit actually is superior to matter and how spirit can actually control matter. Right? When that hierarchy is proper, then actually everything is seen properly, understood properly, and performed in that manner.
So if you want to feed the soul, you have to have a master.
And to feed the soul, you have to have a master. Yeah, you have to have a direction from a master. How to do it. Because you don't know the science. Why is MIT an institute teaching the science? You come to learn here, and people go out and set up all sorts of amazing things with the knowledge that they learn. Right? Similarly, if you learn this knowledge about the self and get the spiritual knowledge, then you know how to control your mind. You know how to use your intelligence beneficially for yourself. You know how to keep very healthy and how to use this material body. You know all these things because you know the machine. You know how it works. What's the mechanics? Who is in control of what? What's the hierarchy? You know all that. You know how the machine works. That's what. Actually, we don't know how this machine works very much. If we did know, we can actually repair it ourselves quite often. Especially in this domain. This is where the greatest problems are. But actually, the problem is here. It's a spiritual problem that reflects itself on this and this. Mens sane corpore sano is the line of the French army. If you have a sound mind, you automatically have a sound body. So the French army focuses a lot on keeping everybody mentally enthusiastic to perform. And they see that the soldiers are physically great. They don't actually do much about this. They do more about this. I'm going on ahead and saying, if you're spiritually sound, now you can talk about SQ, your spiritual quotient, your emotional quotient, your intellectual quotient, right? You can talk about all these things. It's all research done on this. They know that everybody has got a spiritual quotient, and they know that that's both the EQ and IQ are dependent on the SQ. That correlation has been done. So if you have a good spiritual quotient, then you would naturally have a good EQ and an IQ. But if you did not do anything about this, and if you're actually functioning on this, which is what most of our education institutions do, then you'll create a great stress here. Because this is the only next thing you can access. You can't access this because you don't know anything about this, you don't know about yourself. So you suffer. So that's why you're coming to Hatha Yoga classes and you're learning something more about yourself. You can actually go even beyond this, connect with this, and you'll perform in these two areas very nicely. Because you get energized from the top. You get energized exactly like this. You get energized from in, out. Inside, out. You can't actually do it outside in. From matter, outside, coming in is more difficult. But you energize everything from in, out. It's the easier, more organic and natural way of doing it. Because that's how you're constructed. Does that make sense? Okay. Right. Any other question?
So I don't know if I'm going to phrase it correctly, but...
Please go ahead. Yeah.
I mostly agree with what you say. I kind of understand it. But we live in a society right now that is just bombarded from outside. And, I feel like I face it every day. I'm I'm kind of noticed as sensitive because of it. I just tell them I'm just very sensitive, you know, and I mean, that's why I try to do yoga and do all this, but I want to try to find like purpose, and I think one of the greatest purpose in life would be to, you know, share who you are, and like you said, like authentically as possible. But I feel like I'm always hitting a wall, or maybe it's just the way I feel or I think. And so my question is like, how do we you know, find our purpose, and how do we do that? And like, ultimately, we have to know how to share this knowledge or, you know, who I am, because you naturally share it whether you like it or not. You know,
Exactly.
Being around and, you know, going around.
Great question. Now you're thinking about the practical aspects of this great truth and philosophy that we're talking about. Because in real life, you should know how to apply this knowledge from day-to-day life and actually get benefit from that. Right? That's what you're asking for. True. In real life, first thing we do with anything is to gain some knowledge. Get to know. What I'm trying to give you is basic fundamental knowledge about yourself. Alright, first we need some information, some knowledge. And then next comes understanding of it. So we are, you know, asking questions, discussing it, and trying to understand the theory properly. And after that comes basic practice. So that's the meditation that we can teach you, actually, how to awaken yourself spiritually. Because I said in that example of that cage polishing thing, I showed you that how we become either spiritually we are sleeping or we are dead practically. We're not awakened. That's why I call it like, we all have our Sophia moments. In fact, some of the time, most of the time it's Sophia moments. We can show facial expressions, we can do all that, but you're disconnected with the self. You know, it runs very automatically. A lot of things that we do, we don't need to actually think much. To get up in the morning, brush your teeth, and take a bath, and then take your breakfast, and switch on the TV, or you know, browse to your phone, or read the newspaper, or get into the bus. Many things we do regularly. After some time, we don't need to be very conscious about it. There's one problem I have with mindfulness when people say, be mindful about everything. I don't want to be mindful about me, you know, getting into the loo and mindfully, you know, sitting on my toilet seat. I don't think that needs great mindfulness. And there are more important things that we need to be mindful about. What yourself? What yourself? Because some things are anyway autopiloted in your life. But your whole life shouldn't be autopiloted, right? Everything about yourself and everything, and you're completely disconnected. That's why the root word of the word yoga is coming from the word called yuj. Yuj means to connect. To connect. We got so disconnected with ourselves that we are trying to connect. And that's what meditation will do to you. Will actually put you back in connection with yourself. And that's what Buddha is saying here. But of all the things, you must learn how to have respect and love for yourself. In a disconnected sense, when our identities are not yet fixed and we think we are the body, we are the mind, we are this, we are that, we are very disconnected, we don't know, you know, any connection with ourselves. So I think the next thing is, by this meditational practice, you get to connect yourself and you get spiritually awakened. That's when you will actually experience that, wow, this is definitely a more safer, secure position. And I feel self-esteem is risen because I know who's the self, and therefore I'm esteemed about it. If you didn't know who is the self, then how can you feel any self-esteem? Right? You're still probing around trying to find out the self. But here, with the theory, you know, and then by this practice, you actually start experiencing the self. You start connecting, and you awaken consciously. Then you can actually experience that. It's not something that you cannot experience. You'll experience that. Then things move differently. It's something that you can actually practice and experience. Gradually. Right? So if anybody is interested in taking this amazing book called Bhagavad Gita, from which I've spoken many things to you today. You can meet Prakash here. Prakash goes with you. He's here with the books here.
We just have about 12 or so Bhagavad Gitas today. So if we run out, I'll get you one next week. Thank you so much for joining us today. And they say, gratitude is the seed of all love. So, as our sign of gratitude, just a round of applause for.